No, love is all we need. We are the children. We are the ones who make a brighter day. So let's
People should engage in open dialogues with things that they're not familiar with.
Always. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, hers and theys, whatever you identify as. Welcome to Primary Colors Podcast. And today we have a very special guest in the house, Evan. We got the round of applause going.
It's good. Good.
The reason why he's a very special guest because today we're gonna have a very uncomfortable conversation that needs to be had, and I feel like this podcast and this space, thank you WTF Media Studios for hosting us, is a space where we can build bridges for communities and all likes of people around the world. And if you have like any hate in your heart and you want to be like a Twitter finger and try to spread hate, please don't do it under my videos or anything. Please. Thank you. This will be educational and informative. Today we have a half black, half amazing, half Jewish Evan in the house.
Hey. Yeah, thanks for the intro. Let me correct you off the jump.
Right.
I'm fully Jewish though, you know?
Like, fully Jewish.
Hey.
Okay. Fully Jewish, right. Okay.
You know?
I like to start off with some rapid questions, so the listeners could kind of get to know your personality and things like that. So we're gonna start off very simple. Simple.
All right.
Michael Jordan versus LeBron. Who you got?
Ooh, I got Jordan.
Okay. Kobe versus Braun.
Like, you see the shirt, right? Like,
Okay.
I will say this.
Mm-hmm.
My feelings about it have gotten more complicated as time goes on. I'm not gonna lie. I used to be a bit of a LeBron hater, but like I came around to his greatness.
Okay.
Yeah.
Zodiac signs. How do you feel about zodiac signs? You believe in them? You think they're bullshit? Crystals, stars? What's up?
I think they're kind of bullshit, but like, listen, whatever gets you to feel good about yourself or gives you a little inspiration, believe what you want. And honestly, I can't say that I haven't read a couple,
co-stars,
horoscopes and been like, wow, like that's so me. Like, yo.
Okay. Favorite villain?
Oof. That's tough. You kind of brought it up earlier, like maybe Thanos, but maybe also actually like Bane.
You like Bane?
Bane from Batman, yeah. Like
yeah. Okay.
Dude,
Bane is cold. Let's go with. Do you think we've been to the moon?
I do.
You do think we've been to the moon?
I think we've been to the moon, yeah.
Okay. Why do you think we haven't gone back?
Because there's nothing out there.
All right.
Like,
that's true.
Listen, people are motivated by,
competition. Because Russia was trying to go there
right?
too. So,
essentially the clout, right?
Right.
America went to the moon because they wanted to be like, yeah, we were up there. What's good? Russia. Or if there's like money to be made up there, they're gonna go up there, right?
Right.
What are you gonna do on the moon right now? It's mad expensive.
Okay, fair.
Collect a couple rocks. Nah.
Okay. Do you think we're preordained or our life is like already written out?
I believe in free will for sure.
Okay, so you think we make choices?
For sure. I think, certain things are a little harder to overcome, right? I'm not saying like, you're not born and like set along a path, but I'm saying within that path, you definitely have the power to make changes. Like everybody has a lot of influence on their own life. It can be harder for some people to overcome, the obstacles in their way to get to the place that's off course. But you can do it.
Okay. So now let's get into it.
All right,
I always start my shows off with a Cersei, not a Cersei quote, Game of Thrones quote. And
yes.
The quote I have today is that, so Littlefinger, right, one of the characters in Game of Thrones, he says, standing in front of Cersei, he goes, knowledge is power. And then Cersei tells the guards, she's like, grab him and slit his throat. And they grab him, and as they're about to slit his throat, she goes, stop. And then tell him to back off and walk away. Then Cersei goes, power is power. Pussy. She didn't say the pussy part, but I just felt like
It was implied.
that
It was
was
implied.
gangster. That was gangster. So a lot of people be like, read books, knowledge is power, this and that. But how do you feel?
I think Cersei was absolutely right. You know,
Mhm.
like there's a lot of stupid people wielding power, right? And you can have knowledge, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to turn it into anything, right?
Right.
You know, it's funny, you know, going, you know, a little ahead of where we're going,
Mhm.
right? You know, the Kanye skits on what is it, late registration? Nah. When he's like, you know, my dad went to college and he had all these
Oh yeah,
degrees.
and
like,
he had them on the wall.
like-
and then when he died, you know what I had? I had these plaques. I had these degrees.
I'm gonna be the smartest dead guy. Like, yeah, you know, it's like, yeah, like, you know, you can have knowledge, but ultimately, you know, you gotta be able to wield the power, right?
Mhm.
To, you know, some people make use of knowledge to wield power, but that doesn't mean knowledge alone is really gonna get you a whole lot.
Right. Okay. The way I feel about it is I do believe in Cersei. I do think that like true power is true power, because it's like, as much as like I've seen situations where people like can like outsmart you, brute strength like always like somehow comes out on top. It's like,
Yeah.
it's just like knowledge can get you only but so far. And when you have knowledge, you also have to like implement it. It's not good enough to just know, like, oh, I know like this is gonna happen. But if you don't like try to execute, like, this is why insider trading is a thing. It's like you can know like the stock is about to go up, but if you don't say, all right, I'm buying this call option, then you're not gonna make the bread, even though you knew it was gonna go up.
Yeah.
So that's what we concluded with. So now, one of my first questions is, let me go to my notepad. Okay, what does it mean, right, to be Jewish?
So it means different things to different people, right? We were talking earlier, right? Judaism is both a religion and an ethnicity, you know, so depending on who you ask, you're going to get a different answer. Because if you want to go by a religious interpretation, strictly speaking,
Right.
you have to have a Jewish mother to be born a Jew,
Okay.
right? But because it's an ethnicity, because it's a culture, because it's a practice in a lot of ways, right?
Right.
You know, you can grow up in the culture, you can grow up in the religion, and, you know, if you're, you know, half Jewish, right? And like maybe your father's Jewish, but you grew up, you know, with the customs, with the traditions. I personally definitely consider that to be very legitimate. You know, you are Jewish, right?
Absolutely.
Like, obviously, right?
Right.
But, you know, listen, there's in most religions, there's going to be, you know, some sort of divisive lines in some ways.
Right.
So, you know, you can be Jewish in that way. You can also convert to Judaism, right? Like you can go
Okay.
through the process, and, you know, you can become Jewish, right? And then you can adopt the practices, you can adopt the traditions. That's what my mom did.
Right.
You know, she's a convert, and, you know, she is a very, you know, religious Jew, right? I grew up in like a kosher home. You know, I went to synagogue every week,
Talk
right?
about that. Talk about that more too, with the kosher stuff, because I feel I don't understand it, and I know a lot of people out there, they don't understand it.
Yeah.
Too.
Because it's also it's super complicated too. Like the rules, they call it the rules of kashrut, right?
Okay.
And essentially, you know, there's a set ways of both how you kind of slaughter animals, what animals you're allowed to eat, and then certain restrictions. You know, like mixing meat and dairy, you know, is prohibited, and a lot of it comes directly from, you know, the Torah, right? The Old Testament. That's, you know, our Bible, and then, you know, some of it just comes from years of practice and the rabbis arguing with each other about what's okay and what's not.
Not okay. Okay.
So, you know, like I personally, I have a bit of like a a hybrid. I kind of do my own thing in terms of, I don't keep a strict kosher diet.
Right. Okay.
But I don't eat pork, right? I view it a lot almost like halal in a way, right?
Right.
Like, that's a similar, like there are certain dietary restrictions
Right.
that, Muslims follow, and Jews can be very hardcore about it too. Like
Right.
if you're an Orthodox Jew, you practice, very strictly. You're gonna have like 2 sets of dishes. You're gonna be waiting like 6 hours in between eating meat and dairy. Like there's a lot of rules.
Oh, there's a lot of
There's
damn.
levels to like how people practice it. So yeah, like I said, it gets complicated, but
Listen. I will say this. I hear a lot of religions. Y'all know me. I done been up and down the Eastern Hemisphere, and one thing y'all all agree on is that pork ain't something we should be eating. That's one thing I could say. Like all religions is like, hey, don't touch that pork. You said that you can't eat dairy food between and meat 6 hours apart. Like
yeah.
Okay. Y'all care about your gut. That's what it sounds
and it's
like.
also, to me, like so the passage where like that kind of comes from, right, is like don't bathe the calf in its mother's milk, right? Which to me, is kind of beautiful because it's like a sanctity of life recognition, right? And like one of the reasons I really enjoy being Jewish, right, is because I think a lot of these laws like kind of like show respect towards, the world around you in a way, right? You like a kosher butcher, right?
Right.
Like you have to kill an animal to reduce the amount of pain it feels, right? So like, there's a certain way you slaughter your animal to like show respect for the life that you're taking.
Oh
right?
yeah, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
That actually sounds wonderful. Like I don't like the way I kill my animal. I want to make sure it's like quick and peaceful.
Yeah.
I want to say something to you were saying too about like growing up, because like I have like very strong Muslim community around me.
Yep.
And I swear to you, there was this, it was like 3 summers, like I could have sworn I was Muslim because I was going to the mosque with them. I was like doing Ramadan, I was fasting, and it was like I was getting like so into that and like you say, religion and culture is like it's sometimes
community.
like twines
Yeah.
around, and it's like, all right, these people are Muslim, but they have certain practices that are just like something I agree with, and something like I aspire to like do and like be all about in a way. So I definitely hear you when you say like you grew up around this kind of thing, and it's like this is like the culture part of it, and this is the religion part of it. What I would like to ask you is so I grew up in the Bronx, Highbridge. Shout out Highbridge the label.
Hey.
And we didn't have much experience encounters with Jewish people, right?
Yeah.
And the only Jewish people we actually have encounters with is like the Hasidic Jews in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And I want to talk more about like the importance of me having you here and having you like give your testimony, because it's like, I swear to you, not even most, a lot of people think like that's Jewish people and like that's it. Like
Yeah.
it's like if you don't have like the curls or like
the payas, that's what they call it.
Right. Like if you don't have that, like you're not Jewish. Like, and some people look at Muslims that way too. They like if you don't got the turban or like the dashiki or nothing like that, like you not like Muslim. So like I want you to talk about like the difference in like that.
Yeah, so like I said, like there's a lot of different ways that people practice. The Hasidic Jews all around New York, right? Very, very like that's like about as religious as you can be, right? In terms of like how strict your adherent of things, and like, I don't feel, very close to that community in particular, like a little bit because, in certain ways, like, there's groups that kind of do outreach and try to like, help Jews like maintain their religious identity and things like that. But like realistically, like, I can't say I've like gone to a bar with a Hasidic guy and been like, how you doing? Like, let's hang out. Like, no. But, these are like communities that in a way, right, it is like an enclave, right? Like they are a little closed off in a lot of ways, right? Like if you're born into the
Right.
Hasidic community and you stay within that community, you're going to marry somebody who is very much there. You're going to continue to like, build that community from the inside out.
Right, because they have like their own schools and,
Yeah, they have
and
their own
things like that,
schools.
and,
They
and things
have,
like that, right?
a very, regimented way that they do things, and like they're connected with other Hasidic communities in like other parts of the country in ways that even other kinds of Jews don't even know. Like I couldn't tell you like where another Hasidic Jewish community like is located.
Right.
But like I know like they exist.
Mhm.
They're upstate. There's people all over. So yeah, I think a lot of people in New York, right, because the Hasidic community is so visible, right?
Right.
Literally, like
It's-
there's like you see
You
them, and
see
you're
them,
like,
and it's like, okay,
oh.
there's no doubt about it.
it's like yeah, you go to Crown Heights on a Friday night, you're like, oh, it's Jewish out. Like,
Right.
It's like I am in the Jewish community. Like,
Right.
okay,
And it's so intimidating because it's like,
it can be.
how would I go up to one of them and be like, hey, how's it going? Like,
Exactly,
even try
yeah.
to start a friendship or like anything like that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. And it goes kind of both ways though, it's like I think, there's these artificial walls between communities and like certain people, listen, no matter what kind of person you are, what your religion, what your ethnicity is, some people are nice, some people are outgoing, some people are not, right? So
Exactly,
like,
right.
like yeah, like if you ever have like a bad experience with, a Hasidic Jew, maybe they just weren't feeling good that day. Like I don't know.
Right.
Like doesn't mean that, you can't talk or like try to, build within there. But, yeah, it can definitely be tough because, when you have like a difference that is kind of like palpable, right? It can be like
See,
difficult to overcome.
let me tell you this, ladies and gentlemen, too. He's an Esquire, so he might throw big words out there, and that was one of them. What was it, palpable?
Palpable, yeah. Like you can feel it. You can see like that, like
Tangible.
tangible. Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Tangible. Okay, but like it's tangible, like really like a less big word than palpable. Okay.
Okay. You right.
Anyway, but I'm just saying, like, when you feel that there's like, a difference, right?
Mhm.
I feel like honestly, I feel like this is how like some white people feel about talking to any person of color, right? It's like, oh, like they're different. I've never met like a black person before. Like,
Right.
I've never had real black friends. It's like,
Right.
yo, like
Chill, bro.
like yo, just say what's up. Like I don't know. What do you think's gonna happen here? So yeah, like I think there can be more bridges, but it can be difficult, right? And I understand like where people come from if they're like, oh, like I don't feel comfortable like approaching this big group of like Hasidic men.
Right.
Yeah.
I would say that the hats are really nice.
Yeah.
The hats are big drip.
We have time for a long aside real quick.
Yes.
Those hats are expensive as fuck. Like
Really?
yeah.
I mean, it looks like real fur.
Listen,
Gotta be real
they
fur.
are. They're
Right.
like mink hats. Like those shits are, like that. Yeah, people are dropping money. Also, from what I've like heard / read a little bit on the internet, like there's a whole like it's like a whole hierarchy within the community. Like it's a whole weird thing. It's
like the
some
bigger
people
the
are-
hat, the bigger
like
the.
the bigger the hat, like like people are like, oh, that's like people are buying like fake hats just to fit the part. Like, yo, it's the whole thing. Like, yeah.
See, I told y'all we alike. I told y'all we are more alike than we think we not.
Yep, it's
You
the
see
same-
what's going on
it's the
here?
same thing.
Oh man. See, and this is what I like. I like that we can relate in so much ways. You see what I'm saying? So now I want you to talk about like a little more about how you feel with your black side now.
Yeah. So listen, I grew up with my black family,
Mhm.
right? Like when I grew up, right, like I lived on one side of the street. My mom, who's black,
Mhm.
her parents lived across the street from me. So like my black grandparents,
Right.
and like my whole black side of the family like was very integral in my whole childhood. Like that's who I grew up with. So like I've always felt very black. Like like I feel like honestly like I've had a very typical like black American experience in a lot of ways, despite the fact that I am like biracial.
Mhm.
And so like I feel very comfortable right within the community. I don't ever feel like othered or like I've never felt like shunned,
Right.
right? In a way. Which is
Evan,
great.
I've met you a lot of times, and I never knew you was Jewish until like I just thought you was a light skinned brother. I was like,
Yeah.
this dude is just a light skinned brother. And then one day I saw your chain, and I was like, wait, you Jewish?
Yeah.
And then you was like, yeah. And I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
So I definitely hear you, because I honestly thought, I mean, I don't know any more about like 0.5% whatever, but I honestly thought like you was just black. And
Yeah.
I didn't like sense you was anything else. So I definitely hear when you say like, yo, that I grew up in that experience, and like that's like who I was. Do you feel like you have to play any part? Like, do you feel like you have to be one side or not? Do you feel like it's some certain things is pulling you?
I feel like growing up, right, I definitely experienced it to some degree, just because, like with my black family, like they don't know Jews, right?
Mhm.
Like my mom, like I said, she converted. My grandparents didn't really, to my knowledge, really know a whole lot about Judaism before my mom, became Jewish, right?
Right.
So like, yeah, like they were, Christian, practicing, and celebrated Christmas. Always had the tree up. I get like a Christmas present. Like my little cousins over there, they'd always like ask little questions, like oh, like why are you celebrating Hanukkah? Like all these things, So
Right.
I'd have to like, I was like the in-house Jewish guy to like,
That too. I got the New York State public education, and that's another thing that I felt like could have helped us a little more, was like around Christmas time, like they would speak about Hanukkah, right?
Yeah.
But they really would go into depth.
Yeah.
So we'll know like, oh, like Hanukkah is like what Jewish participate in.
Jewish Christmas, right?
Right. And it's like, but what else? Like, teach me
Yeah,
more.
Well, it's funny because I feel like a lot of people who are not familiar with Judaism assume Hanukkah's like this big major religious event, because Christmas is like, I think
Right.
Christmas is like Christmas, Easter, and like what else? Like I don't know. Like, but Hanukkah is like low key, like kind of like one of like the lower end holidays for Jews in terms of like religious significance. Like culturally, it's big because kids love it.
Right.
It kind of like allows us to feel like included in the holiday season in a way, I think.
Right.
And it's just fun. It's fun to light the candles and come together, eat latkes, fried potatoes and stuff. Like it's great. But yeah,
Okay.
I would recommend anybody watch the Rugrats Hanukkah episode if you want a little rundown.
That's a classic?
It's a classic.
Okay.
It's a classic.
What are some dishes that you say like that is like your dish
Specifically for Hanukkah or in general?
in general?
So in Hanukkah, like the latke, which I think is generally like also just viewed, it's just like a potato pancake.
Okay. Potato pancake, don't do that to me.
It's
Because
like-
we make pancake with batter and eggs and things like that.
So essentially, right, you shred up a potato, maybe put a little egg in there, you mash it together into like a little patty, and then you just deep fry it.
Deep fry. Okay.
It's bomb.
That
Very,
don't sound
very
too
good.
bad. Don't
You can
sound
put a
too
little
bad.
onion in there too. Give a little
Okay.
seasoning. Yeah.
Okay,
And
that don't
then,
sound too bad.
Obviously matzo ball soup.
Don't know
Very
what that
big.
is.
You don't know matzo? Oh, yo, bro. I'm trying to think like who has very good matzo ball soup in the city you could try.
Okay.
Maybe like
Would they let me
Russ
in?
and Daughters. Yeah, bro.
Okay.
The restaurant, like, look, I'm not saying you got to knock on a random Jewish person and have to like, I need some soup. Give me the matzo balls, dog. Yeah, and then because like, listen, like, so the Jewish culture, right, it's pretty varied, even within itself, even within the small community, right? So then if you want to look at like Israeli foods, if you're in Israel, shawarma, falafel, hummus, things like that.
Okay.
The like Israeli salad, they call it, right? It's like just tomatoes and cucumbers and like oils and vinegar and stuff, like, so there's a lot of different things like that. Challah, challah?
Yeah.
Delicious.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now, as I always say on this podcast, I need to know about the woman. And did you feel like you had any restrictions in like your dating life and like who would be acceptable or not?
100%. If only because like I know like my mom and my family always wanted me to marry a Jewish woman, right?
Okay.
Like had to be Jewish, which is
Mhm.
funny because I didn't really date Jewish women.
Mhm.
My girlfriend now, like she is on the path to conversion. She has like Jewish roots.
Okay.
But like yeah. So she's in the process of converting. So I always had a vision of me marrying a Jewish woman.
Mhm.
In part because like I said, like I like being Jewish. I
Do you think you've been
appreciate.
brainwashed?
Okay. See, this is a deeper question though, because I
Okay.
think
Uh-huh.
all of society brainwashes you in one way. It's just about
Absolutely.
it's
I
about
agree.
like the whether or not you like the brainwashing, and I do.
Right.
So like so there like
It's like, yeah, I'm good. I'm athletic.
Yeah.
I can play basketball. Yes, I'm about to try to get to the NBA. Why
it's like,
not?
yeah, that's what I have
like
to do.
that.
That's what I've been told is
Right.
the best route for me. Like, yeah, I
Right.
gotta do
It's
that. So yeah, listen, I think religious, what you want to call it, like indoctrination, religious teachings. Everybody like internalizes things, and yeah, there's some things that I look back on like growing up, and I'm like, y'all should have told me some other things too with that, right? And that's how I feel about everything as I get older. I'm like, you guys just gave me the cliff notes that you wanted to give me, and like
Right.
now I have to learn all this other stuff to get a better perspective and to like make my thoughts my own thoughts.
Right.
I don't want to just be out here just regurgitating whatever somebody else told me when I was like 10 or 11. Right.
Form your own thoughts.
Form your own thoughts, and like
That's very important.
So-
I'm happy you're doing that work. I'm
Yeah.
happy you're doing that work. Because I feel like we do get told as kids like what is the good, bad, or whatever, right? And you get older and you think like, ha ha, but not ha ha funny, ha ha weird.
yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, Mom, Dad, I don't agree with that. I think I'm gonna go this route because there's some like even in my culture, right? Y'all know I'm from St. Kitts. I love saying I'm from St. Kitts, and is very homophobic, and like
Yep.
I cannot just like agree with it because like that's the way I was raised. I cannot just be like, oh, I'm doing this because like this is what I was brainwashed and told when I was younger. It's like, nah, I'm doing the work and like actually like sexuality is actually on a spectrum. Like
Yeah.
you can actually like this and like that and also like this and like that.
Yeah. And it's like, first of all, why did anybody care enough to teach me, what they taught me, right? It's like,
Right.
I always look at like the motives, like if I started like looking at a belief and I start like kind of taking it apart, like it's like, why is homosexuality allegedly bad, right?
Right.
Tell me why. And like people can't explain without just going back to, certain self-fulfilling kind of truths, right?
Right.
Like, it's like, oh, it's bad because the Bible says it's bad. It's like, why does the Bible say bad? Because it
Crickets.
does. Like, because that's what God said in the Bible. It's like,
Right,
well,
right.
it's like, come on, like, I don't know.
It's like form your own thoughts, my guy.
Exactly. Like,
Mhm.
and also just be a good person. Like,
That
ultimately,
too.
like,
That
like,
too. It's like I want to talk about that too because when I was growing up, I was an antagonizer, right? Some people may call me a bully, but I feel like I was an antagonizer, and I feel like there's a difference, right? Because a bully is like Debo, like I'm
Yeah.
taking your chain or I'm
Yes.
taking your bike, right? And an antagonizer would be like Ezel, where he's like, yo, everybody smoking, taking a shit, and then like walk away, right? It's like, you gonna let him say that to you? Oh, he talking about your mama. It's not like, I'm not really, I am causing harm, right? But I'm not
Yeah.
doing like direct harm. It's just like, harm was already caused. I'm just throwing gasoline.
Yeah, like you're more of like an instigator,
Get instigator, right?
not like go in there and like like beat some people up.
Right. And I want to talk about Kanye and Kanye's position that he's taken, right?
Yeah.
And I want to know like what was so offensive of like what Kanye said.
So, first of all, this man has said a lot. You know,
You know what?
Said a lot.
Let me pull that back. Let me pull that
He
back.
said a lot
What was
of
so
things.
offensive that Kanye said about Jews? Because he definitely said a lot of
He said a
offensive shit
lot.
about black people.
He said a lot of offensive things about black people. He said a lot of offensive things about just the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this man is out here supporting.
Damn, it's like Kanye don't like you personally. Because he get at your black side and he get at your Jewish side.
Yeah, and he hates my politics too.
And he hates your
I'm like, damn, bro. Like, you know what's like very tough for me is like I was a day one Kanye fan. I had the College Dropout CD, you know, like on repeat the day it came out, pretty much. Like, so
but you do understand like that his mom died. He's off his med. Like there's context to that man.
Yes.
That
No,
people are
I-
not really looking at.
No, I think I disagree with that though, because I think people are tired of looking at that because at a certain point, he's a grown man who needs to have accountability, and he essentially is saying, "Fuck your accountability. I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say. These are my beliefs, and also the fact that you're angry about it means that I'm getting persecuted." That's how I view it a little bit, because
But let me ask you
he's
this though.
doubling down on.
Let me ask you
crazy.
Let me ask you this though. As a person that drinks a lot, right?
Yeah.
When I'm on one of my binges, and it's like I some of my roommates know if I go through a 12-pack before 1 o'clock, y'all niggas is in trouble. And the thing is, right, they'll tell me like, yo, Shaq, stop drinking, right? And I'll be like, nah, I'm good. Y'all wildin', right? I feel like what they're doing to Kanye is like they know that he's going through an episode, but they're still putting the mic in front of him, which is, I feel like, kind of like fucked up on their end.
Right. And I definitely agree to some extent, right? Because when you see somebody who is clearly having struggles, yeah, like maybe you need to like be the bigger person in the situation and just kind of be like, okay, we're gonna put you in timeout, like until you get your shit together.
Right.
But ultimately, it's like he is demanding the mic in a lot of ways, right? Like he knows that like if he goes on Instagram and posts, I'm going to go DEFCON 3 on Jewish people,
Right.
it's going to get traction, right? So he's getting what he's seeking, and it's hard for, you know, media, Jewish people to just like kind of ignore that, because other people who are not Kanye are going to see that, and it has influence, right? When you are that influential, right? Like one thing I see all the time on Instagram, right? It's like Kanye has 18 million followers. There's only 15 million Jews in the world. Think about that for a second, right?
What?
Exactly. Think about that. Kanye is sending messages to a population, directly to a population, people who chose to follow him, that is larger than the entire Jewish population in the whole globe.
That's a crazy stat.
And he is,
I ain't gonna lie.
And it's tough to even like conceptualize, because I think people view Jews and Judaism and you know as slightly larger, right? And we can get into that in a little bit about like why that is. But it's like, yo, like this is a tiny group of people that you're picking on, right? And you have a lot of influence, and you're claiming to be the victim, but like, are you? Like, are you the victim? Like, you're the victim of your own, you know, illness and ego. But like, come on, man, like put the phone down. And like, I don't know how people in his circle who care about him have not kind of stepped in sooner.
That's what I said too.
Right?
I was like, I feel like enough people are not looking at how Jay-Z treats Kanye. And I feel like if I had a best friend and my best friend don't come to my wedding, that should say a lot. And people should look at that. And I feel like the way Jay-Z is treating Kanye is like, he loves Kanye. I know Jay-Z loves Kanye, but he's loving him from a distance in certain ways, in certain aspects. And that's how I like have love for Kanye too, because it's like I like, yes, he's a black man and he's saying his thoughts and he's free mind, free will, whatever. But like there's a certain cap or limit to when it comes to like the things you do, because I'm a person that's live, love, laugh, right? And I stopped judging people lately.
Yep.
I started more looking at it as like, when I see somebody, I'm like, are they happy? at what they're doing? Yes. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Because I was running around the track, right? I'm training for a marathon. And there was this dude voguing on like the grass. And I could have sat there and judged him and was like, why are you voguing here? Like you go so many other ways to vogue. And I'm like, is he happy? And I'm like, he probably having a ball right now.
Like, was he killing it? Like, I don't know.
Right. Nah, I think he was killing it. I think he was killing it. And I was like, he's having a ball. Like, why am I over here judging him? Like, I'm the one with the malice in my heart. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But to get back on topic, I honestly feel like he is doing this because there's a lot of people that has like theories about like, oh, he wanted to get out there, did a deal. Like he wanted this freedom. And another thing I want to talk about, him like not being like recognized as a billionaire anymore. It's like if they took it away that quick, was he actually a billionaire? Like, and this is my whole thing with money. No, this is my whole thing with money too. It's like America has convinced the whole world that my paper dollar that I can fucking print out my ass is worth than your paper dollar. Is worth than what you consider currency, right? And then we have this situation, this opened my third eye so much, that we have the situation where like Kanye is like, oh, bragging in interviews like, do you make more money than me? No? Oh, I don't listen to you, blah, 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 this and that. And it's like, bro, they just stripped your $1 billion title just that quick. And it's like, do y'all know how much $1 billion is? Like, if someone was really a billionaire, you cannot strip it that quick, bro.
Right.
Look how much money Jeff Bezos' ex-wife is giving away, like, to charity. Like, come on.
See, that's real money. See, there's real billions and there's fake billions, and I think most of the people who are billionaires, right, at the top of the list, they got a lot of fake billions that are padding those stats, right? And that's also like, listen, I could talk about this kind of shit for like too long, but it's like the reason, we can't really easily like kind of tax these people and get them to pay any money, like the reason Jeff Bezos is not paying any income tax, the reason your kindergarten teacher is paying more percentage out of her paycheck than Bezos is, because it's all fake money anyway. Right? It's like none of it exists.
Made up.
None of it exists. Like you can't just go to the bank and be like, I would like to withdraw 100 billion, please. Like, no, like you got to make moves and make moves and make moves, and eventually you get liquid, I guess. But like, no, Kanye was never liquid. He was never a real billionaire. We just like to kind of puff people up like that. Like
this shit was bullshit. And I'm like, no one is talking about that. No one is saying like, oh, he was a billionaire and they just stripped it away just like that. It's like, don't y'all think that's funny? Don't you see like some masquerade shit going on here? But that we'll talk about that money stuff. We'll talk about that another TikTok. Yeah. Now let's talk about let's stay on topic with like the hurtfulness and like the impact it has on the community.
Yeah, we strayed away from the question, right? Like what was hurtful about it and what was to me dangerous about it? Because when you tweet out, I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people, right? Like that. Like what does that mean? Like I can't think of any interpretation of that which doesn't kind of throw.
And DEFCON, and like I said earlier, with the big vocabulary words, DEFCON 3 sound like some crazy shit.
It does, and that's what I'm saying. It's like you're like it just sounds violent. It sounds like hate. Like it just if that's not like hate speech, then like. What is like? Do you have to be like I would literally like to kill all the Jewish people? Like how? Like because like there was not like people didn't get context for it. People couldn't like you can't really work around something like that, right? And then he continued to say things, right? Like the whole tirade, just talking about
And I didn't like the condescending stuff either. Like there was some clips I seen where he was being condescending and was like. Someone was trying to correct him in the term of like he was speaking and he was like Jew or like doing things like that.
Yeah, and it's just like he is not willing to engage in any kind of good faith discussion of like why people are taking issue with what he said. And that to me is like a big red flag, right? Being like, okay, like you just want to be hateful, right? Like to me it seems like what he was saying is that I'm being exploited by Jews, right? And like maybe he's trying to make a point about like these industries, and like maybe he like had negative experiences with like one Jewish guy who happens to like be influential in his life. But then you're essentially attacking a group that has, for centuries, if not millennia, been maligned and attacked. Like it's tough to like unpack all this because there's a couple thousand years of history where Jewish people are looking like we've seen this before, right? Like
Right. So
it's all the same playbook. You're just essentially like not even being creative about bringing it to 2022. Like this is the same exact shit that was being said 1930s in the Holocaust. Like all the Jews are like controlling this,
right.
like
So
all these
like
other
him saying like
countries,
the
like,
Jews own this, the Jews own that, right?
yeah,
Is like something that has happened in the past that
yeah,
had a bad outcome.
terrible
And
outcomes.
and I feel like people are not understanding that. That's very important. People are just like, oh, he said they own everything. They do. And it's like, yes, right? But also that has led to like them being like hunted and stuff like that.
Yeah. And that's what is tough for me, because like I'm not here to like be like, no, that's like completely out of reality. Like, yes, there are very many influential Jewish people in entertainment and in other powerful sectors, right? Like,
Right.
I'm a lawyer. I see lots of Jewish lawyers, right? Like, considering it was a small percentage of population, sure, you can make an argument that like, yeah, like Jews are, batting above average for like, what they're what what the population is, but it's like,
Right.
you can also have a much greater discussion about why that actually might be without going deep down into like conspiracy theory, Jews control the world narratives that stoke, anti-Semitism. Like, and there's a lot like anti-Semitic hate crimes, right? Hate crimes against Jewish people in this country like are up at least 35% in the last 2 years. And I believe, I looked up the numbers before I came here. I'm like, in terms of all hate crimes that are religiously motivated, 50% or more are against Jewish people, despite the fact that Jewish people make up less than 5% of the population. So it's like you have, like you can't just look at his words in a vacuum and be like, whatever, it's not that bad that he said it. Like, you have to realize that like there is already like a underbelly of the population that does not like Jews, would like to, up the violence against Jews even more. Like you have people in Charlottesville 2 years ago chanting with their little bullshit tiki torches, Jews will not replace us, and like all these things kind of like weave into the mindset of the Jewish community being like, no, we have to like, speak out against this because it is a slippery slope, right?
Right.
He is normalizing, speech that incites violence. When he's like saying Jews run the world, let's go DEFCON 3 on Jews. What is the logical conclusion to somebody saying something like that, right?
Right.
When you have, a lot of influence and you have a platform and like, there's a lot of scary things, right? The Jewish community is very defensive for good reason. And, it's tough to just sit idly by when somebody's with a lot of power starts coming at you, and then you see, other people kind of like either outwardly supporting it or like kind of just like being quiet and kind of nodding their heads like, yeah, he's kind of right. Like, it gets scary real quick.
The numbers thing is so surprising to me too, because I feel like a lot of people on the Black community side, they're like, yo, we should do this, we should have this power, right? But it's like, if your community is as small as you saying it is, it's like it's way much easier to get that much people on board to like stick together and be like, yo, we really all we got.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And that's what it is, right? It's solidarity, right? If people want to ask like how, Jewish people can be influential, it's solidarity. It's because, if you have a small community, you see what the community's doing, right?
Right.
Like like when you see a successful person within that community, they're not so foreign to you, right? It's not like I feel like if you want to compare it to the Black community, it's like, you see a successful black person
Mm-hmm.
and you don't necessarily have any idea how the fuck they got there. Right? Like,
Right.
like you didn't go to church with them. Like you
Mhm.
weren't like in a volunteer group with them. You don't know their kids, like
Mhm.
whatever it was. But like in the Jewish community, it's so small. Like, yeah, you're gonna know, you're gonna be like,
Wait, so
two
this-
people removed from that person at the top anyway. Like, I was like, oh, I know how the fuck they got there. They did this, they did this, they did this. I can also do that.
Wait.
I have questions.
Yeah.
I have questions.
Yeah.
Go ahead, T.
Tiffany Haddish, Drake. There's some black Jews, some successful Jews. Oh, how they get there? Do you know?
That's what
Tiffany
I was
Haddish,
saying.
I don't really know.
You don't have the answers.
I don't. Listen, I definitely. got the
Tiffany
answers.
Haddish is Jewish. Did you know?
No, I did know. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But her sounds like an Ethiopian Jew. Anyway, I'm just.
Yeah, and like,
Breaking
listen, like, we can talk about the Ethiopian Jews and like the struggles that they've had also with being recognized, legitimately as Jews. I think there's issues there for sure, which I think also, like, listen, there's layers and layers and layers and layers, and every time I think about it, talk about it.
Sorry,
Yeah.
because I was telling you earlier before the pod was rolling about the Hasidic Jews specifically, which I didn't really know much about before because I'm from California. We don't have Hasidic Jews. We don't really have many. I don't really know many outwardly like I'm Jewish people from California.
Listen, there are Jews in California.
I bet.
They're there.
But only like you only hear people acknowledge it as like ethnically like I'm tied to this because of my family. You don't hear like on the East Coast it's like I'm Jewish, like there's a strong Jewish presence on the East Coast. And so like I noticed like the recruiting thing or it's not recruiting.
Oh, with
Sorry, I don't want to miss
No. I understand. No, with like just
trying to get them to
for
tap
people
in
who
more.
don't know, like you have Hasidic people. It's usually an organization called like Chabad, and like they're trying to find Jewish people and continue to like connect them to their Jewish identity in a way. And they're very religious themselves. So yeah, they do kind of, they kind of profile people. I can't even lie. Like they're like, oh, you might be Jewish. Like, they're definitely not stopping as many
also
black
like
people.
on average, they're like, okay, this is what we look like. I actually got a chance to work a show where a woman who was a part of the Hasidic like Jewish community, she left.
Yeah.
And so she talked about her experience, and they made like a Netflix movie out of her or a TV show out of her life.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so she came. She got it. It was her like so she came here and she talked about that experience. But anyway, I just say it's just I think that there's like a huge disconnect between communities. I know people often talk about this thing called the empathy gap. Like people always say like, oh, white people like their empathy can only stretch so far for like the black plight.
Yep.
Because it's like I truly cannot even fathom what the fuck you're even talking about.
Empathy takes a lot of work. I think is what people kind of gloss over a lot of times, right? It's like you can be very empathetic, but if you don't have the full context and background, your empathy is going to have very hard and concrete limits. Yeah, it's going to be very shallow empathy.
Like, do the work then.
Yeah, people don't want to do the work. People don't have the time or mental capacity to do the work. Also, like, which I can understand.
But don't go out of your way to inflict some. I guess people don't necessarily know that they're inflicting harm from a community by spreading certain sentiments. Yeah. But still, like you're going out of your way to contribute to something that is harmful to a community, and it's rooted in a lack of understanding.
Yeah.
And so I mentioned the recruiting thing because I'm like, Tiffany Haddish is Jewish. She had a bar mitzvah.
Yeah.
But like, so
did you have a bar mitzvah?
I had a bar mitzvah. Yeah.
You ain't invite me, you fucking asshole.
13, bro.
Did you even know him at that time?
Like,
no,
definitely.
So it's like there's this empathy gap. Like there's black Jews. There's all types of Jews. But like, I think that black people, we get so wound up in our own plight that we're like, well, no one's struggling as much as we're struggling.
Yeah.
When in reality, yes, there is people struggling adjacent or
right.
I don't want to say more because it's hard to gauge
this gets into the oppression Olympics.
Yeah, I don't want to get into that. But that's also the main issue with this, what Kanye is saying, because he's like spreading this rhetoric that's kind of like fueling this black against Jews war, which is super volatile.
It doesn't make any sense either. It's like, these communities share a struggle in a lot of different ways, right? Like people don't necessarily think about this now, but it's like up until like the 1960s, 1970s, like Jews were othered. Maybe not to the same extent that black people were,
Mm-hmm.
but like you had signs that would be like no coloreds, no Jews, like, and that was common, and people don't like kind of account for it because Jews often are kind of, you know, light skinned. They don't necessarily have like an identifiable like visual, like, you know, oh, that's a Jewish person,
Right.
like, but like, you know, even the term Jew, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you look at South Park, you know, I remember growing up and you have Cartman out here being like, "Oh, you Jew," and it's like that was like
that was a good
put down.
interpretation.
You know, and that was a put down, right? And it's
Mhm.
like, you know, like there's a lot there that, you know, now because people, you know, have kind of like embraced, you know, Judaism and Jewish people more, you know, people are quick to forget, right?
Right.
But it's like everybody in America had, you know, their periods of discrimination, and the Jewish people had a very long one, you know?
Definitely, let's just definitely acknowledge that anti-Semitism is rooted in America as strongly, or just as strongly as white supremacy.
Oh yeah,
they go hand in hand for sure.
And they just but it gets brushed off so easily. And I say that because, like I said, I'm from California. I don't have that much experience with Jewish people, but I remember when I moved out here, my roommate, she was talking about the Jewish people like in the area in New York, and was like, "Oh, they do this, they're like this," like. And to me, I was like, "This seems very hateful."
Yeah.
Like, I said, like, I'm an adult. Like, I understand right and wrong. Like, I know I don't understand the full context of the Jewish experience, but I can understand when something seems off.
Yeah.
And so when I came over here, it felt like anti-Semitism was just the norm. Like, she was like, "Oh yeah, they don't like." She was just, the things that she was saying, it just seemed like so inhumane.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the rhetoric that's being spread, I think that for Black people, because my roommate that was telling me this is Black, I think that because we get so caught up in our own experience that it's easy to be like, really put our plight over other people's, and then also just like not have extend as much empathy for another community. And I think that with Kanye's comments, it's easy for Black people to cling on to them because, like you said, Jewish people tend to be lighter skinned. They tend to look white. And to Black people, enemy number one, white people. So it's like, oh, you're Jewish, even though you have this like layer where it's like you are part of an oppressed group, you're a white person, so you benefit from white privilege.
Exactly.
So that you're part of this system that buys into white supremacy at the same time. But I would like to know your perspective as a Jewish person on the dangers of buying into rhetoric like that. Us against them rhetoric. Like, I just told someone recently in our pod group chat, I won't name him by name, but you know who you is. But I'm just like, there was a lot of Blacks against Jews rhetoric as being spun as a result of what Kanye said. And I felt the need to remind them, like, this is not Black people against Jewish people.
Yeah.
So anyway.
No, I think the aside from, you know, the rise in maybe literal violence against Jewish individuals, right? It kind of makes people focus on the completely wrong fight, right? Like, we all are fighting against
you don't know how
this
much
white supremacist patriarchy. Like, shit, like, bro, like, let's not get, like, okay, you have, you know, no side quests, you know, like, no, like, side brawls over, you know, like, essentially nonsense. Like, why are we fighting for scraps between these two communities when realistically what needs to happen is that we need to join forces and like recognize and like uplift each other. And when you start, you know, spewing this, you know, everybody gets very reactionary, right? Like, the Jewish people are like, oh, Black people hate Jews. Oh, Jews hate Black people. Like, and that's the, you know, very natural result of when, you know, somebody who people give a lot of you know, value to their opinion on, which I think is dumb because we, you know, we praise celebrities like gods in this country, but that's beside the point. You know, when you start having like that kind of talk, you know, it's like, why are we fighting each other when honestly we both are still under the boot? We're still under the boot right now.
Right.
All of us.
And I've been feeling like a lot lately where I've been becoming more conscious of my thoughts, because the last interview I had, he was cooking. He was talking about how your thoughts become things, and like what you think is like how you feel and stuff like that. And I really feel like I'm on a journey and I'm walking with a group of people and we're like headed to the dungeon and we're about to knock the door over and then like they start fighting in the back. And I'm like, yo, y'all chill out back there. Like, we going to fight the real people. We need to fight. And like, then they start fighting and two people start fighting over here. And I'm trying to break up fights. And I'm like, y'all missing the point. Like, we are all together as one people trying to fight this one thing. And y'all just start fighting amongst each other.
Yeah, doesn't make any sense. You know?
Okay, so I want to talk about like the collective thing because Michael Rappaport might have been trolling. He might have been exaggerating. He might have been doing a lot.
Yeah.
Right? But is there some truth to like it being a small community and y'all being able to have contact with each other?
I would say yes. Honestly, like it's not that easy, right? Like you think about it like
absolutely. I know. Okay, so this is what I want the people to also understand. Like if like I'm Jewish, I don't want you to think like, oh yes, I have like Michael Rappaport's number, blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
no, like no.
So
scared me.
So there you go. Listen,
right.
So black people have more access to Michael Rappaport, is what I hear.
It's like,
I've never met that man. I've never, you know.
But so I want you to explain that part of it.
Yeah, so like, you know, like I said, it's a small and honestly pretty tight-knit community in a lot of ways. So it's funny because like I feel like if I meet other Jewish people from like the East Coast especially, you know, we can play like Jewish geography, right? And like if you list off enough names, you're probably gonna find a common thread.
Okay.
Right? Like that's what it is. It's not like, oh, like, you know, XYZ famous Jewish person, like, let me just ask this person who knows this person and they'll give me the number. Like, no, it's not, it's not even close to that. I wish it was. You know, my life would be way better. But, but like, you know, like there is a sense that like, you know, like you can make connections that way. You can like kind of find a common thread, you know, in one way or another with other Jewish people, like, you know, because it is you know, like it's a shared community, right? Like if I meet another Jewish person, I'm like, oh, like, yeah, I used to go to like Jewish summer camp. Did you go? Like, oh, did you like, do your kids go anywhere? Like, oh, and like, odds are if I ask enough questions, we're gonna find something very close in common that's like.
Do you think it would be as helpful? Like, so like, would you share some of those resources with me?
If you know, specify, you know, I'd try for sure.
Okay.
But like I don't know what those resources are because ultimately,
right. That's why I just said resources because I'm like at the end of the day, it's like what is really being shared. I guess jobs or positions or
but
shit like that, right?
Yes and no, right? Because it's not even that direct. You know, it's not like people are usually getting hired because you're Jewish or like even like maybe because they know somebody specifically,
right?
But you know that kind of nepotism. Big word. You know,
you get comfortable now.
You know, like that kind of stuff. Like, you know, that happens no matter what. If you know somebody, you know somebody. Like, good. And the group that happens most.
That's one of the biggest things that Braun I accommodate Braun for. Like he put his team on.
He put his team on, and nobody criticizes him because they recognize that is actually how the world works. Like if you really know somebody, you will get put on, and you should get put on.
Right.
If I had a friend who didn't put me on, I'd be pissed.
Bro.
Pissed.
Right. I'll be pissed too.
Be like, yo, bro, I'm broke as fuck. You're not gonna put me on? You just signed $1 billion Nike deal and you're not gonna put me on?
Right.
Like, be your driver. Come on. Come on.
Put me through school. like ask me what I want to do and put me through school. And then when I graduate, like I got this big ass network. Like, what, you not gonna sign with me? I'm LeBron's best friend, one of his best friends.
Yeah. You know, and that is actually just how the world works. Right. One of the things that I think is frustrating, you know, for Jewish people in general is like it almost feels sometimes like the Jews are getting punished for like success within the very like strict confines of like how the world operates, right? It's like nothing that, you know, the Jewish community does is like so different or like so like unheard of. It's not like this giant global conspiracy. It's like really simple stuff. It's like oh, like, you know, you want to like talk about one of these stereotypes. It's like, why are there Jewish lawyers, right? I could go like I personally have theories that it goes back to like how the religion itself operates to ask questions and to look at the text and to get answers. That's what lawyers do.
Right.
But also just because like, yeah, if you see somebody be a lawyer, it becomes much more easy for you to go do that. Like anybody who knows a bunch of lawyers is going to then be like, oh, I could do that.
I think I could go to fucking law school right now.
Exactly, because you know mad lawyers. And you're
I
like,
hang around lawyers and I'm like, I could figure out once I get the discovery what I got to write up, what I got to do. Like
it becomes less of like this like weird magic behind the curtain. It becomes very like, oh, these are like the easy to take steps that I'm gonna do, right? And like that's how I think Jewish people are able to like be I guess more successful, right?
Right.
Out of a percentage basis than like other people, and it's like because like you get exposure. You're gonna know how to do some things that other people.
Did you feel like you got that exposure?
Not really, honestly.
Okay.
Because like I was the first lawyer in my family, and like I can't think back and like think of any Jewish family friends that were lawyers. And then when I went to law school, it was like, I didn't have direction. I didn't know what I was doing. But then I looked at other people, like if I like one of the guys I was friends with in law school. Like both his parents were federal judges, right?
That's stupid.
Not Jewish, but like
I'm pretty sure he knew the fucking law.
He knew exactly.
I'm pretty sure.
And
I don't think he needed to go to law.
Who cares about knowing the law? You know how to navigate a space,
right?
Right. You know how to navigate certain issues and challenges, and how to position yourself in these ways. And that's real. What they call like social capital, right? Like that is how you actually. Climb ladders and like get to the top of whatever it is, whatever the industry, whatever the job, like that's how you do it. Like you have somebody who's going to show you the ropes, show you the, the blueprint, and then you're able to just work off that. It's easy.
Right.
It's not magic. And it's definitely not, weird Jewish cabal blood magic that people are talking about in these conspiracy theories. Like, that's nuts.
Oh man. Okay. I want to switch pace a little bit and I want to get into, Israel and Palestine and like what's going on over there. What they call it, the Middle East?
In the Middle East, yeah.
The Middle East.
Yeah.
What is your take on it?
So like I've said with everything, tons of layers, right? So like for me to really, I try honestly not to engage with
I'm gonna ask you a few questions.
questions. I'm just saying like I try not to engage so much because like I have complicated feelings about it myself, right? Like I don't think it is black and white
as
by
people try to make
any, like people are very very tribalistic about like everything right now in our world, and it's like like can you just take a step back, read a book, think about it for a minute, and then tell me what you think, right, and like also let me actually challenge your thoughts without you just being very reactionary. So it can be tough for me to like really engage in conversations sometimes about the conflict. But yeah, ask away. I'm an open book.
So, we have, for the people that don't know, Israel and Palestine are like they have been going back and forth for a minute. Do you think that Israel has like the bigger like army?
Oh, okay, 100%. So I think that when people look at it's tough for me to even like describe it because like a conflict to me in a way like almost like minimizes what's happening, right? Like you can't make any legitimate argument that the Israeli army is not crazy superior and much better funded and much better set up than what the I guess you could call the Palestinian resistance is.
But what I also figured out is like Gaza and like what's
in the West Bank
are like two different like
and they are. And that's what
it's confusing.
People don't really understand the complexity of what's actually happening and what has happened in the past. Like you said before we hopped on here, it's like you just want to know about the last century. And like even in the last century, like There's books, bro. Like there's volumes. Like
right.
You talk about like all the peace deals, all the failed peace deals,
Right.
the assassinations. Like you want to talk about proxy war type stuff. You want to talk about like the Nakba and like the displacement of Palestinians and like how Israel, the state, was created. Like there's so many different layers. It's like, to me, one question is like, what do you even define as Palestine? Because if you want to go by like the history of the victors, of like the people who were like the imperialist forces, an independent Palestine never actually existed.
Right,
which is crazy to think about. People kind of feel like, oh, that
even Rome like owned that land at
like
one point in time.
From like Rome, and then like the British,
and the British put their notes in there. Oh my God, what's I heard that part too?
Obviously, and they're the ones who created this whole conflict. You know,
right? I'm like, yo, British were in there. And then they took themselves out. I'm like, bro, how you gonna start a fight and be in a fight and then want to remove yourself when shit can start getting too heated?
We're out, y'all are in, deal with it.
Right?
It's like, what? And like, this is like so typical though of like, all the old imperialist colonizing nations, right? It's like they drew lines in the sand that divided the native people there. And then obviously they did not care to like learn about the cultures and the people who had been living there. So they did all this stuff and then they washed their hands of it and they left people with conflict. It happened all through Africa.
Let me tell the people from Highbridge what I need them to know. Great Britain, basically British people, I don't know Great Britain or not, was less Britain or whatever. British people came in, right? And they basically said like, yo, we're gonna like govern you until like you're ready to govern yourself. Right? Basically telling you like, we're going to do things and we're going to control things around here until you could do it for yourself. But the native Palestinian people was like, yo, we good, da 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 da. And then it got to a point where Great Britain like lost control of that. Like it stuff really got out of hand. And then they removed themselves and the native Palestinian people didn't have like much like to work with. And like Arabic people came in, and it's just a whole big mix-up.
Yeah, and like the whole history is like super complicated too, because you're talking about like all these different empires, right? Like you want to go back, it was like before Britain, it was like the Ottoman Empire, and then like all these other like, very imperialist forces like pass the land back and forth, and like it's a very small place, right? And you want to actually look at like what the history of the Jewish people is in that land, they had been removed. They had been removed by various, other, empires.
What I heard too, like the temple was like broken down.
The first temple was broken. The second temple, and that's why Jerusalem is such an important, piece of, Jewish history, and also like such an important like. I can't say bargaining chip because there is no bargaining around it, right? Like
because Muslims they say
they're like we need, everybody wants Jerusalem, and that to me, if you look at the history of like what's been proposed,
we're the same people. We're the same at the end of the day.
Like everybody's like
that should let you know, right?
Like no, this is my place, and it's like we're not gonna budge, and like that is the whole history. Like if you go back to like the 90s, when like there were peace deals in place where like both sides made demands. They agreed to like 99% of them, and like what was the holding point? Jerusalem, right? It's so ultimately it's like a religious conflict, but then you also have these other like outside issues that are kind of impacting it, and then you also look at the why is the U.S. so involved, and then you get into like all these conversations about security in the Middle East and like all these like U.S. imperialist policies, right? Like it's there's a lot going on there. I will simplify it in this. I believe in the right for Jewish people to be self-determinate in the land of Israel. I believe that Israel is a legitimate Jewish state, and I believe that the Jews have a history there, and they have a very legitimate claim to the land. I do not believe that what is happening in Gaza and the West Bank is okay by any means. There are clearly human rights violations happening,
right? And
the whole situation continues to break down over the last like 20 years, where the heat gets turned up, and through both, I won't say like both sides are equal, but both sides are operating in bad faith.
Okay, so let me say this now, and I want to go here, and I don't want it to feel condescending because, again, I have a New York public education, and my brother's back at Highbridge. I want to make sure they get right, so I'm gonna try to like build a bridge between like what you said and like understanding. So let's say Christopher Columbus, right? He comes to America, and there's Native Americans already here, right? And he comes and he does what he does, right? The native people, right? They got lost in it because Christopher Columbus is like, oh, I discovered this. Like, I came from this place and I'm here now and things like that, right? And is your understanding like Israel people were already there, or like Palestinian people were already there, or like people that are born there now, like what would they consider to be? Like, explain that to me. Like, who's native, and like if I'm born there now, like what would I be?
So this kind of makes me think of like the Dave Chappelle does like a skit about this, which honestly hurt my feelings a little bit. That's beside the point. That's beside the point. So you want to talk about like who's native, like who's this, like these are all labels. I will say this much.
Okay.
There is a very clear and readily available record of Jewish people in the land of Israel for thousands of years. And they maintained as best they could, a population within that land. I will say this. Once the land was established, even before 1947, which is like, when Israel really, was officially declared, there were people moving there, right? And there were issues with, people warring against each other essentially, but like on the low, it was like the same, you have this group of people, they don't want this group of people to come in. So that, you have tensions between those communities already. I can't say exactly why, right? I don't know why people don't get along in general, right? It's just like, you have religious conflict, you have cultural conflict, people feel like they're being displaced, or they just don't like each other. Like, like people kind of forget about that, that sometimes
I mean, like on some level for my people, like Haiti and DR are going at war, and I'm like, bro, y'all on the same island. Like,
exactly,
y'all need to relax.
You put two groups in.
I don't know why y'all
room.
fighting,
Like
right?
they're gonna find a reason to fight each other, I guess. Like sometimes if they're not that chill. So especially like back in the day, I feel like people forget, and everybody wants to kind of put a modern, almost like Western world view on the conflict. But it's like you got to remember, like
context matters.
This is like a hundreds years old religious conflict that has just continued to this day. Like, like you're fighting over land, you're fighting over beliefs, you're fighting over like who is right and who is wrong. And nobody's ever gonna just like be like, you know what? I'm wrong. Take all this land that we have been wanting for centuries.
Right.
I'm gonna pack it up and go live somewhere else. Like, no, that's not gonna happen. So honestly, I kind of forgot the question.
All right, I want to talk about. Let's talk about your hair, and the hairstyle. So where I'm from, St. Kitts, like Rastafarians.
Yeah.
They and this is why I give Imani shit too. I give Imani shit because I'm like, bro, you got dreads and you out here eating chicken and these kind of things. Because like to me, like when the people I grew up around that had dreads, like they will only eat like the only meat they will eat is like fish.
Yeah.
And everything else would be like plant-based from the earth. And I want to know like what it means to you.
Honestly, I'm not gonna say that I have a deep connection to my hairstyle at this point. Honestly, like I liked it.
Oh, so you're not connected to your blackness.
What?
So you're not connected to your blackness.
Well, listen, let me finish. Let me finish. Listen, like my mom when I was growing up, she had dreads, and I was like, yo, like I had been growing my hair out during COVID because like I didn't want to go to the barbershop, and like I was like, yo, I'm gonna cut some of it, but like let's try it out. Let's see how it looks, and like
you feel more powerful.
Nah.
Okay.
Nah, not more or less. I feel like I like it. you know, I feel like, you know, it's a great style, you know, like I feel like it's very popular right now too, honestly. Like I feel like I see like a lot of like black dudes with dreads right now. Like everybody's rocking this exact hairstyle. I'm like, damn, like I didn't think I was gonna be that unique, and I was not. So
okay, I feel that.
Yeah.
And before we get out of here, I want you to drop some knowledge to the people. So I want to know, like, what's the last book you read, or what book are you reading now?
Oh, that's tough.
You don't read? This fake ass Esquire talk about that's tough.
What are you talking about? Because here's the thing, I read things and I like don't finish them. It's my issue. Because I read for work though.
Right.
So like reading to me has become a bit too much of a job. It's been a chore. I've been downloading just like random like PDFs of things. I recently downloaded and like started reading a little bit of like Das Kapital by Marx.
Not ringing it.
Nah.
What is that about? What would that be, like a self-help book or something?
Yeah, but it's by Karl Marx. It's like the Marxist, like it's about like class consciousness, class warfare. Okay. It's essentially like an anti-capitalist manifesto.
Oh, you cooking? Okay.
Just because, like, listen, like these are ideas that people are still essentially clinging to and like have a lot of relevancy today. You know, because like we were talking about, like everything in terms of like why are we dividing ourselves in this way with like comments by people like Kanye.
Right.
You know, like this is preaching like forget all these labels that we've put on ourselves that have been imposed upon us. Like we actually are living within a system that is divided by, you know, class, like the workers versus those who are exploiting the workers. And like we need to like have a consciousness that we are all actually in this together. There's a unity that we need to have if we ever want to like escape from the exploitation. And I think that's super relevant right now because, you know, it applies to everything that I see wrong in the world, right? Like if you're talking about like better working conditions, if you're talking about poverty, if you're talking about like, you know, the fact that we are living in a time where, you know, the gap between the wealthy and the poor is as big as it's ever been.
It's growing.
And this is all happening with the backdrop of like the world is literally fucking burning around us and the people with power are not actually exercising it to preserve the future of the planet. So it's like, you know, if who's going to do it? It's not going to be a single person. It's going to be all of us awakening third eye, you know, like, you know, like Kyrie, you know, open your third eye, but like do it in a better way, you know, like, you know, and yeah, so
you believe in global warming?
We don't even believe in it.
Okay. I mean, I'm from the Caribbean. I see the shorelines moving.
Oh, and listen, at this point,
and it sucks for me because like people in New York, you can't see it, but when I go back home and I'm like, bro, the water keeps moving closer and closer to the wall. It's like I see it.
Yeah.
And I feel it. So when I ask you, do you believe in it? I'm not asking like, oh, because I don't believe.
Okay, yeah. Because like, listen, at this point, like, I'm like, if you're even questioning the, you know, existence or like whether or not human beings are creating climate change, you're lost. Like I'm just like, yo, you want to discount 99.9% of the scientists for that one article you fucking read on like Reddit one time? Like get out of here. People are dumb, like cherry picking facts. It drives me crazy, yo. It really does. But yeah, no, I believe in climate change, and I believe that like we're pretty fucked. Like if we don't take very decisive actions.
Nah, let me ask you this. So do you think like the treatment that Kanye is getting in terms of like all the things that are happening to him is fair?
Yeah, 100%. Because
I gotta push back on that.
He has all the right to say whatever he wants, and everybody else has the right to react in the way that they want and they feel is appropriate. So he, like I said before, like he is an adult. He can say he wants to go DEFCON 3 on Jewish people, and I can say, okay, I'm deleting your music from my library. I'm no longer going to buy or support anything you put your name on. And the companies that I buy, if they are associated with you, I'm not going to support them either. That's my right. That's my free speech.
So you never buy another pair of Yeezys?
I never bought one to begin with. I'm rocking with the J's.
You like, we don't do stripes over here.
Listen, what do my other black Jewish brothers say? Checks over stripes.
Right.
Yeah.
You know the bar. But one nasty thing I see Adidas doing, they're like, oh, Kanye, like we're kicking you out, but we're still gonna like release like, colorways and stuff.
See, and that to me is another issue that's in a way like exploitation of the worker, right?
Right.
Because I'm not mad that Adidas cut ties, and nobody should be that mad about it. But like, why did Kanye not own the rights to any of his shoes? Why did he not have that kind of equity in the designs? I don't really know if he created them or not. But either way, it's like, why somebody, had a lot of power and leverage. He's blaming it on Jewish people. And like, he's mad that he just didn't negotiate a better contract.
Because at the end of the day, like, we don't know what's going on at that table. Because Kanye could come in and be like, I have this design, and then fucking Jack or Jill on the team goes, oh, we should add this, we should add that. And that's their input.
Exactly.
Kanye can't own that. And like, then they release a sneaker under like Yeezy, and it's like, oh, there's like 5 different people that collaborated on the sneaker.
Exactly. And listen, I think Adidas benefited incredibly from partnering with him. Like they were lucky that he like came to them.
Oh yeah, they were dying.
Because like he gave them
like
a lot of relevance.
Is dying. Like all these brands are dying.
But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, well, you're just mad because you are in a situation where you don't feel that you were able to negotiate what you thought the real worth was. And then I think about, the Human Got the Answer Sway, that interview, right? But like, what was Sway actually saying to him?
Right.
Was that, do it on your own.
Do
it on your own. And he could have done it, but he didn't want to do it, or he felt like he couldn't do it, or maybe
it's not even he had to do it on his own. Do something with Jay.
Do something. Go create your own community to build the funds that you need.
Look at Fubu.
Anything. He had options.
Right.
And that's why I don't feel bad. He has options. Like, I'm never gonna feel bad for somebody who went from a billionaire to being only $100 millionaire. Like, well, come on. Like, oh no, Kanye lost $400 million. How much does he have left?
Right.
Like, how much can he still make? Like, if he went and did a show today, how much money would this man be able to make? Like, I'm not gonna ever feel like, oh well, you got treated so unfairly. Like, life's not fair. The world's not fair.
What about? Because there's 2 things that rub me the wrong way, and this is the pushback I want to get.
Yeah,
is with the Donda school students, the girls that now they can't like compete in like athletic events.
Oh, okay, see, I didn't even know about that.
And then the 2 athletes, Aaron Donald and Jaylen Brown, they pulled away from his like athletic agency, right?
Yeah.
This is my issue with it. Donald Sterling, the previous owner of the Clippers, right? He came out. His side chick was recording him.
That was crazy.
Right. He was saying racist stuff, right? Not one of the players said, I'm not playing for the Clippers. Not one of the players said, like, I'm not honoring that contract, right? And it was like, oh, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? Oh, we got to make him sell the team.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, okay, Kanye wasn't running that sports agency.
Yeah. So I will say, in a way, I think that's apples to oranges, right? Because when you look at the Donald Sterling situation, I think the players on that team, Chris Paul led like essentially like a mutiny, right? And in a way to put public pressure on it. But if you were a player who said, I'm not going to play for this team, you're not like boycotting Donald Sterling necessarily. You were literally just taking money out of your own pocket and burning it. Because like you don't get paid, your team, the fans, like they were like, listen, like especially like that was a good team too. Like you can't, like,
it was Lob City, Lob City back in the day.
Like, come on, they had championship aspirations. Like you're talking about like you want me to like throw away my goals and aspirations and money because of something he said, right? Whereas I look at like people cutting ties with him, like that's economics. Like Jaylen Brown, Aaron Donald, they cut ties with him because it made financial sense, because it is bad for your brand to be associated with hate speech. And like, yeah, that's a smart move in my books. If I was his agent, or like, you know, some outside consultant, I would have been like, yeah, you probably shouldn't be the two only big athletes signed to Kanye's, you know, agency, because you will be under the microscope. Everything you say is going to be, you know, perceived with that, like, in the back of everybody's mind, like, oh, you see what he just posted? Yeah, he's one of Kanye's, like, you know, guys on his contract. Like everything's bad. Like, you don't want that. But I do feel bad for the students though, because yeah, like Donna, and that's what like sucks about it, is because other people are facing consequences because of him going off the rails. Like these kids who are at the academy, like they went there because of the attention that he can get you. He can help you and lift you up. But, you know, I guess it's a double-edged sword. It's like, oh, now we don't want that attention, right? Because it's only doing negative at the moment. I think, you know, I hope the kids are gonna be okay. And I hope the academy continues to operate, if only because it's good to have stability in education. Like, you don't want to have to bounce around schools. Like, nah.
Okay. That's fair. Damn. I just feel like it when it's like handled, not that this situation is being mishandled. I just feel like the situation overall, it just doesn't look or feel like when people do things to black people, it's not the same like, type of like.
I 100% agree with that.
Execution when it comes to like handling things.
Yeah, I forget who I was talking to. I think it was like Chase or somebody, like, cut their ties with him over these comments, right? And I was like,
his bank account, like
his bank account. I was like, hold up. Like, I completely condemn everything that he is doing, but who the fuck is Chase lending money to that has done worse stuff than this? Like, tell me.
That's true.
Tell me who else is still has a relationship with him, like, that has like done war crimes and all these other things, and like.
And Chase is definitely holding on to that bread.
And like here's what, like, you know, as a Jewish person, like, also sucks is because like the backlash from this also does support his argument. Like I can't ignore it, right? Like when you have, you know, Kanye's gonna say like black people, you know, you chose to be enslaved for all these years, like, oh, like white lives matter, oh, Donald Trump, like all that stuff. Who cares? We'll sweep it under the rug. And then he starts making anti-Semitic comments, and all of a sudden, consequences start happening, right? Like it looks
like, oh,
I see
these
how
people are in control.
I see how you buy into it, but like ultimately, if anything, I think listen, if Kanye was white and he said black people chose slavery for 400 years, he would have been canceled immediately. But you can kind of sit back and like take shots at your own community like that. I think that's what it really comes down to. And without the black community boycotting him from within, you know, everybody else wasn't going to do it first, I guess, because they weren't impacted.
Absolutely. I feel that. There was one more thing I want to talk about too. There was a Charlemagne the God, Breakfast Club interview, and they had like one of the Jewish heads at the label, and they were asking him like, with the whole like rapping about shooting and guns and like that, and gang violence and doing lean and doing pills, right? They were asking like, don't you think that's a negative impact on the black community? He was like, yes, I do think it's a negative impact. Like, and then they asked him like, but why do y'all promote these artists? And like, he basically fell flat because he didn't have anything to say. He was just like I have a family to feed.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I think that is an honest answer.
Do you think that is anti-black for artists to promote like gang violence and doing drugs and saying like, oh, I'm gonna kill you because you from this block and stuff like that?
So I think it's a complicated sort of like analysis you have to do, because like what we're talking about in a way is like free speech, right? And like almost like a free market in a way. It's like, why is that promoted? Because the answer, right, is because it is profitable. But why is it profitable? Because that's what people end up liking. It's what is getting clicks. It's what's getting views. It's getting listens. and then you want to say like, well, why is it getting that? Like, I don't have an answer for that, but it is. And ultimately, as like a business executive, you're making decisions based on reality. So if you start like kind of like censoring people, right, or like trying to push your agenda, then you might be criticized as like, you know, like, oh, like you're not representing the real Black experience. But like, oh, you're not representing the hood. Like, you're not doing this. Like,
wait, Evan, didn't you don't think I wanted to hear Many Men at the Super Bowl halftime show? I didn't want to hear no fucking candy shop. I wanted to hear
exactly
Wish Death upon me.
Exactly.
Blood in my eyes and I can't see. Like, they censored the. I was like, bro, you got Dr. Dre. Right. It was like, you got Dr. Dre, you got 50 Cent, and you got Snoop Dogg, right? At the Super Bowl halftime show. And I did not hear one person go, gunshot this, I kill this pussy this. And it's like, Dre could have played Fuck the Police. I'm pretty sure NWA would have cleared that. I'm pretty sure he got that pull.
The NFL would not have cleared that. Like, nope. They'd have been like, and we're pulling the mic.
Right. So like, it is profitable, right?
Yeah.
But it's not, I guess, politically correct.
Yeah, because there's a difference though. It's like, you know, the execs on the radio, what you hear, like that stuff to me is like, I don't even understand like how songs become popular. Like I do not have any idea.
No, I definitely do think some people are industry plants.
Yeah,
when it comes to
exactly. Like they are, that. And like, listen,
it's like that nigga munch, blah blah blah. You eat it for lunch, like that's sus. That's not bars. That's not. It's not nothing.
But
like,
it's a punchline.
It's catchy.
It's punchline,
right?
Yeah,
it is a punchline. It's a punchline. It is a punchline. But like
you can put it as your Instagram caption.
I'm like, Lord, why are you playing her? Why I'm like,
oh damn! I'm trying to figure out what mic is mine. Because you're saying about like murder and things like that. I don't understand why Black people can get so outraged about like them about. I gotta be careful what I say. But
come on, T.
I'm
Stop
saying,
playing
like,
with them.
We're definitely outraged by like some Black people are outraged by not being able to feeling like they're being silenced by being able to speak up on this thing that Kanye's talking about them feeling like their place in society, like the way that we're placed is like.
Let me see if I can help you. So like,
because you talked about the murder and the violence and things like that and free speech and things like that, and I would say that those things are promoting Black death.
Yeah.
And so and
agree.
Kanye's comments about Jewish people is promoting violence towards Jewish people because you're perpetuating hate, which hate can cause violence. So really, it's like he's like, anything is up. I don't care. I don't care about the consequences. And like people who talk about murder and Black death, that it's like the same thing. It's like you're endorsing murder, violence, and disregarding history. Also, on top of that.
So I think though, like, I don't think Kanye makes no sense in a way, right? And I think if he could make his points in a way, like if he wants to say the music industry is promoting content that I believe is harmful to the Black community overall. Sure, nobody's gonna be like, wow, Kanye's went off his rails. Like, no, but everybody's gonna be like, wow, Kanye, that's a really insightful comment.
But his thing is also, I do not support obviously his anti-Semitic points, but his point is that even though realistically, the people in power being Jewish has nothing to do with the decisions that they make. Like them being Jewish is not like we're going to promote Black violence because we're Jewish. Like, and that's really the problem is that like that people are connecting those things when they're not connected. But it is people who are in positions of power in the media industry who are on average Jewish people that allow, or that not allow, but that are like, yeah, do this, say this, and we're not putting that up because this is what sells.
But here's the thing, though. First of all, you like in that argument, right? There's an assumption that the industry is actually run by the Jews versus there being Jewish people in the industry, right? So if you go into any room, right, that's making these decisions, you're telling me that there's not Christians and other people like who are also contributing and signing off on all this other shit. So when he singles out the fact that it's, oh, like this is what the Jews are doing, like, that's what becomes a problem. If you want to talk about music execs, talk about music execs.
Yeah.
You don't need to talk about, oh, the Jews who happen to run the world and are music execs. Like, at that point,
it's kind of a coincidence. It's not really.
It is like, and it's like, even if it's not a coincidence, are you telling me that it's a conspiracy against you and it's a conspiracy being like orchestrated by this very small community? Like, and that's the danger of it.
It makes me think of illegal immigration into the United States and the scapegoating that happens. I mean, scapegoating, the first time I learned about scapegoating was with Jewish people and how people did that. But also now,
the long history of scapegoating the Jews. And that's what I'm saying. History. Like, and that's why the whole argument was like, it's not in like nobody who's Jewish views this in isolation. They view it with, the force of that history being like, we've seen this before. This is exactly what we're tired of. Please stop. Please fucking stop. Like,
and the reason why I bring it back up is because I want people to understand that are listening, like, because I know it's really mostly Black people that's like listening, and it's really the average Black citizen, and so the dangers of promoting something like that, and I think that, and also the dangers of having an us versus them mentality when this situation.
What you think will be the equivalent for like a Black person?
What you mean?
Like, let's say like they start saying like, oh, and it's funny that we want this, but let's say like, oh, they're like, oh, let's go to Harlem, right? Only Black people are allowed in Harlem. Y'all want your own city, y'all want your own stuff, and then it turns into like segregation where like a Black person that wants to go down to 34th Street now is like, oh, this is whites only.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And it's like a Black person may think like, oh, they're trying to do segregation again. Like, let's stop this. Like, let's not do this. But then it becomes like a slippery slope when it's like, oh, they're moving in. Like, it's gentrification. So it's like,
I mean, this is the difference between displacing a community and the community being able to thrive because they came together. I think that's what happened with Jewish people. It's like, we're thriving because we came together. It's not like fuck y'all. It's like, we gotta survive, nigga. Like, we gotta get together and like we gotta figure out how to get it, and like, and it happens to be where like a lot of Jewish people are in a position of power in Hollywood. They can call the shots. But I think that I just really want to drive the point home that like it's not because that they're Jewish that there's an agenda set because of that context.
Right. I agree with that. I agree with that. Is like, oh,
I just want Black people to understand that. They're sitting at home right now. Like, there's no Jewish agenda against Black people.
And that's the thing. Like, when you start like dissecting what he's trying to say, it seems like he's making out that there is like an agenda, like when he talks about like, like Planned Parenthood and like all these other things, and it's like, like, and that's what I'm saying. This man said a lot of things. He said a lot of things.
Planned Parenthood,
like the Holocaust, like, and like first of all, I take as like a person who's pro-choice, like you are way off the deep end there because you are literally stripping people of their own autonomy. Like, women have the right to choose if they want to have an abortion, if they need to have an abortion, and it has nothing to do with the fucking Jews. It has nothing to do with the Jewish people.
Quite literally.
Like, what are you talking about? Like, and it's nuts, but like people are gonna be like, oh, like, yeah, this Jewish conspiracy, the Jewish agenda to like make sure that like the Black population is kept like.
But I just want to emphasize that, like, that is what's getting people caught up. Because people name Ice Cube, people name Nick Cannon, people name Kanye West. Like, these are niggas. Well, Ice Cube really, not much happened to Ice Cube. He really escaped unscathed. But Nick Cannon, like, he lost a lot. And so I would say, like the dangers in that is perpetuating something that is contributing to, like, a group of people that is already an oppressed group. Like, these people are already experiencing oppression every day, just like you. As a Black person. And so I just really want to emphasize that point. Like, Nick Cannon got left because not realistically, because he's still a rich man, but like he got knocked down off of certain positions because he's perpetuating something that is just not only not true, but it's extremely dangerous and dividing and what is it, polarizing, people like to say these days.
And it's like I feel like some people that are not even Kanye fans or Nick Cannon fans are just like, oh, I'm gonna pick their side now because like
they want to cling to something.
Yeah,
and it's like, you know, you're gonna choose a side that you think, you know, is supporting your community, right? Like, oh, like especially when you frame it in these terms, it's like this is this community versus this community. Well, I gotta rock with my community, right? And like I can't say that like, you know, it's, you know, completely wrong, especially because most people are not over here doing like hours of research, like. What does he actually mean by that? And what's the actual truth? Like, what's actually
the problem?
Like,
that's really the problem.
Because Kanye isn't either.
Exactly.
It's like you were saying, like, oh, Kanye's not informed. Like that is the problem. Like, don't speak on it then. Like even today, like I told Shaq and them, like I don't even want to speak on it, but I ended up speaking on it even today because I'm like, I just feel like I personally don't feel like I've even done enough research. I don't even really know, like, because I don't have as much experience with Jewish people. Like I don't really know enough about Jewish people to even speak on it as much. And so like I don't feel like I should be on a public platform, like publicly speaking, if I haven't even like. I don't even have any Jewish friends, you know, like, or even like, I just, and I feel like that was like where Kanye went wrong, like as a public figure. Like if you want to stand on something, stand on it, but like make sure you're informed about it first.
Absolutely.
Especially because if you are you know, somebody who didn't grow up, you know, wealthy or successful, right? And like you go and like you become that, and like I bet. You know, if I had to bet my money, right, I'd say the first time Kanye, Nick Cannon, Ice Cube were interacting with Jewish people, they were contract table. They were powerful, successful Jewish people. Let me tell you, I know lots of non-powerful, not that successful Jewish people, right? Like some regular ass Jewish people who are not, you know, exercising any authority, power. There's no Jewish space laser that we all have the codes to, like, you know. And
that's what I was trying to get to earlier too. It was like I don't have no experience where I'm like, oh, this is like my Jewish friend. It's always like, oh, it's like this Jewish guy that's like in this community where like only Jews are, or
that's vice versa too. I feel like lately in my experience in New York City, I've been meeting a lot of Jewish people lately, and they don't have as much experience with Black people either.
Exactly,
and I think that's dangerous for both of us because like you see people who are buying into like the whole thing that Kanye's saying, the us versus them mentality. And I think that it can allow some Jewish people to think like, oh, they don't care. Like they don't, you know? And then you see people like me who I don't necessarily understand things, but I'm open and I'm trying to be empathetic about everything. And I'm trying to be informed about things. But what's dangerous is that they don't see people like me. They're going to see people like Kanye and it's going to, it can wage a war. It really can.
Yeah. One thing I will say though is like, you know, the Jewish community is very small, but I have found a lot of times like the values of the community, you know, are positive, right? Like I know a lot of Jewish people, even when I was like out there protesting, you know, summer of 2020 in the George Floyd protests, like, you know, I saw, you know, almost surprisingly, well, not that surprisingly, no, in the community, but like, you know, there was like, there was a lot of Jewish people, a lot of visibly Jewish people. You saw like groups of rabbis there supporting the cause, you know, going back to the civil rights movement, you know, there's pictures of like MLK marching with rabbis by his side. You look at the Freedom Riders.
Oh,
you had Jewish men who were
like priests.
A rabbi is like the
like
Jewish equivalent of a priest, you know. And then, you know, you have, you know, these guys who were doing like freedom rides in Alabama who got murdered, you know, trying to uplift, you know, not only themselves, because Jewish people definitely benefited from the civil rights movement, but also like uplifting the Black community. And I think, you know, I took, you know, a course on the whole, you know, relationship at that time. You know, there's a lot of history there that people have, you know, kind of forgotten about. And, you know, there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of intersection. We're all fighting for the same goals. Ultimately.
Can we get a little conspiracy theory? Ooh,
stop playing, T.
I want to be in the television industry. Well, that's like my goal. I'm like, listen, don't cancel me, Jews, please. Jewish people. I didn't even say. Anyway,
can't even drop her first show yet. Her first movie, her first skit
like,
yet.
Please, like, I love you, but I used to date a guy who was Muslim, and he was from Egypt, Arab Muslim. And I remember him saying like there's this like thing between Arab and Jews.
Yeah, for sure.
And he was just saying like there was like a battle, like certain war where Arab people like massacred Jews. I don't know. But I don't know. There was like there's this thing dynamic going on. And I wonder whether like because Black people tend to be more connected to like Muslim ideals
100%.
on average in like Nation of Islam type shit, even especially in New York. I wonder if that has anything to do with like anti-Semitism.
100% connected. I don't see any way around that link. When I view a lot of these like celebrity voices and I think about like where these ideas are coming from, I think a lot of times it comes from Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam.
Who was heavily rooted also in the entertainment industry. Like if you even read about like the way that Death Row Records used to move, Tupac and all of them, Nation of Islam, even to this day, like Nation of Islam niggas. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but let's like observe that. Let's consider that.
Like everybody has to recognize the biases of, you know, the movement that you are associated with and the leaders that you follow. And I think
you said it here. You were like, yo, Israel army, like you said it like they're powerful, and and that bias you were admitting that.
Yeah, and for sure. And I also admit a bias, like I am pro-Jewish people. Like I am, like, you know, like I am, you know, on that team, you know, to some extent. You know, I think when you look at the source of like, you know, where these ideas that are hurtful are coming from, you know, I think that there is that connection for sure. And I think when you look at, you know, like going back to the, you know, Israel-Palestine, you know, conversation, right? Like there's a lot there just in terms of like the greater Arab population versus the Jewish population, that also to me, you know, as a Jewish person gets swept under the rug a lot. Like people forget, like you have this tiny nation of Jewish people surrounded by very
I was looking at the map and I'm like, okay, Egypt is here, Liberia is here, Jordan is here.
They have all been at war with Israel at certain points over the last, you know, like 80 years for sure. No, not 80, because like I said,
the thing is, people don't even understand how long this history stretches, and that like even though you don't even never understand that you're still affected by it, and like there's context that you are a part of that you don't even understand. Like even with the Nation of Islam thing, like I am very much a Christian woman, but like because I'm a Black woman as well, like I'm already like. I run adjacent to those things.
Exactly. Like you've had you know conversations with people who like have those beliefs and like hold them very closely.
Even think twice. Like okay, maybe it's because of this. It's like this is how I've lived like my life.
Yeah,
it's dangerous though.
It can be, especially when people don't take the moment to think and to
read. Google's free.
Question. People don't question enough either, or they ask the wrong questions.
Yes.
People ask stupid questions rather than asking the important questions. Just like who benefits from
lead with love. That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because like if you don't believe in hate, like you are gonna be open to understanding. And love is understanding. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. And also, sorry, one last thing.
Yeah.
Because
T, why are you saying sorry? This is your
fault.
You will not offend me. I am very hard to offend. You just say some crazy shit. I'll
like
answer
honestly,
you with a straight face.
I didn't even truly understand like the depths of anti-Semitism until I moved to New York City. I really just didn't understand because like Jewish people, like I said, like in California, we don't. Like I don't interact with a lot of Jewish people. There's not a strong presence.
There's not
on the day-to-day there.
And there's not in a lot of places. But go on.
So I didn't get that until now. Now I'm really understanding. Like okay, there's some powers at play. Like people think that they're like part of this fight, like this good versus evil fight.
Yeah.
But it's like if you really are, then you're on the side of understanding. You're on the side of love. You're on the side of information, ultimately. And that's a Black person specifically. I'm speaking to Black people specifically who are going to listen to this podcast. Like, we should really be the most understanding because we know what it's like to be on that end where it's like, oh, there's no empathy on this end. Like, there's demonization. There's, you know? And it's the same thing happening to Jewish people. So please understand that. It's the same thing. And we can only win. And I guess I'm a little Marxist by saying that. It's just funny because you're saying you're reading about Marxism. Like, the only fight we have is against people in power, and the people in power are the 1%. And that's
literally 1%.
1%. And maybe there are some Jews in there, but like it is not the Jewish people who are the 1%, right? And that's a very big distinction because like listen, there's very powerful Black people as well in entertainment. There's a lot of very powerful Black people in entertainment.
Arguably?
Kanye is one of them. And that's what's crazy to me. It's like Yo, you're angry because like you think that you had an unfair deal. Meanwhile, you just became a
Motherfucker,
billionaire.
nigga, fuck you.
Like, oh my gosh. Yeah, so there's two concepts.
No, you ain't get there by splitting everything 50-50.
No, I know you wouldn't.
No. So like two quick concepts I wanted to touch on. Like, I think a lot of times when people have these conversations and they talk, badly about Jewish people, they feel like they are punching up because they view Jews as
Whites.
like on the top of the mountain, and they view Jews as being like
I can say anything about a white man.
Exactly. And honestly, people do get away with saying a lot of crazy things about white people who, and most of the time, there's a good basis for that. But that's not the point, But like, when you are, saying things like Kanye said, it feels like you are punching up, but really you are punching at the very best across at a very small group of people. And there's also, for people who are Jewish, like there is what I think gets mostly attributed to like a lot of like Asian communities, like the model minority kind of complex, right? It's like, oh, like you actually get a beneficial treatment because like people assume that like because you are Jewish or like Asian, like you have all these positive qualities, and it's like that doesn't actually in practice on an individual level work to your benefit. Like people are gonna make assumptions about you that are not good. They're gonna put all these like weights on you that are not good, and like people can be negatively impacted by both negative and positive stereotypes, and it's just something that I think also gets lost in the conversation a lot because it's like, oh, like Jewish people are wealthy. And it's like, that can't be a bad thing to say. But then it's like, I look at my broke ass when I grew up. Like,
but that's what I'm saying. So they say like Jewish people got like reparations for like the Holocaust, right? Like, can you trace that back in your family?
No. And actually, speaking about like my girlfriend, like her grandparents fled Nazi Germany and had all their assets seized. Like, they never got that back. And like talk about like a family that had like their whole future derailed. Like her grandfather came over here and was like on the path to be like a doctor, and like instead was tuning pianos for the rest of his life. Right? Like nobody got reparations. And like some people in Germany have, if you have like, I think Germany is like the exception to the rule. All the other Jewish populations that were like forced out of either Arab nations or across Europe, they're not getting anything in return for what they had taken from them.
Oh, so it's only like German people, like
I believe. Listen, I'm not super familiar because like honestly, like I never, like my family never got anything, even though like my family was like Polish and Russian, and like definitely suffered losses in the Holocaust. But yeah, no, there's not like any like every Jewish family never got a check. Like, yeah.
Okay.
Also, black people should get reparations in the U.S. for sure, 100%.
I mean, you fall in that category, so
yeah, I do. I do.
They're gonna be collected left and right.
I'm saying like,
hey, run it.
All right,
yeah.
T, put the camera on here for this one because this is what I want to ask him. Evan.
Yeah.
Do you say the N-word?
Yo.
Nigga.
I will. I've cut down. I've cut down a lot.
Okay.
I'll sing it without reservation though.
Okay. Do you think Drake should be able to say the N-word?
Yeah.
Okay.
Listen, I support people who are biracial, living in their blackness however they see fit. I the way I've always thought about it, right? And I think you actually, when you prepped me for this, you're like,
right.
Oh, do you believe in like the one
drop blue, right?
I do, because I look at it like, listen, like I come from a family like my grandfather was like a sharecropper in Georgia. Like I can easily trace my roots back to slavery, and like if I had been born 150 years earlier, like I would have been a slave. Right. So it's like, why am I going to exclude myself from a category that I was clearly within? Like,
you wouldn't be passing. You got kinky hair. You would have been. You couldn't have been in no mulatto. You wouldn't have been in the house, but you would have been the slave.
Yeah.
Sure.
Listen, I might, and like, I don't know, maybe they would have put me on accounting or something. Like,
Regardless.
That's fucked up. Sorry, I'm Jewish. I can make these jokes, okay? So I'm saying though, like, when people say crazy things within their community, they're not going to face the same backlash. But if I started talking crazy shit, about,
I got one question.
Yeah,
because I heard a lot of people saying like the difference between like the Black community and like other communities is like these people will make mistakes, but Black people be like, nah, you can't come back, like type shit. Like you can't be a part of us anymore. Or, like you're outcasted. But like you see a lot of like white people make huge mistakes or say things or whatever, and they're just like, they kind of sweep it under the rug. They're just like, it's like it never happened. What do you think about that? Do you think that like, what do you think is an appropriate reaction for the things that Kanye has done? Do you think that he should be done in society? What do you think?
I think we all need to give it some time and see what the ultimate reaction is. I have forgiven Kanye for a lot of shit, like his comments about slavery, right? Like, to me, like, I'm pissed off about this particular situation because this is not the first strike, bro. Like, you've been talking wild shit.
Like, if he would have said some,
he said. I was looking today. I was like, just trying to like remember, like, what did Kanye actually say? Like, you go back, like, he's been saying this shit for like a decade. Like,
you typed it in Google, like, what Kanye said,
like,
bad shit popped up,
and I was like, everything. I was like, I forgot about that, and I forgave him for all that other shit, right? And then this time, it just for some reason it just feels different. Maybe because like he quadrupled down on it. Maybe because the actual rhetoric this time was so crazy and was so inflammatory.
Yeah.
Maybe because now shit's leaking out that Kanye is obsessed with Hitler and shit. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of things out there that are just like, I don't know if I'm ever gonna, get back on the bandwagon that I was. Like I said, I've been a Kanye fan my whole life. Like before the whole, red hat shit with Trump, like I would unequivocally say my favorite artist of all time, like my favorite musician.
Yeah, same.
But when he put that red hat on, you was done with him.
No, because I kept listening after that. I was like,
oh, you're not listening now?
Now I had to cut him off. I don't know if I'll ever go back to like being a listener, but like I'm never gonna be downloading his shit. Like he can't have my streams for right now. Like
okay. So if it's on shuffle and it come on, like
I skip.
Nah,
I skip. I immediately skip.
Nah.
Wait till I skip this shit.
Okay. We get some honesty on here. We get some honesty on here.
Kanye changed my life. Like
we get some honesty on here.
For real. Yeah, no. It just pisses me.
You're not the only one, T. You're not the only one because like
he's a hero. Well, he was a hero at some point. Like even him.
I mean,
bold to say,
there's a quote that says like
people.
that's what's crazy.
If you live long enough, like you see yourself become the villain. Like so
in the worst way. This is not just a villain.
Yeah, I was also pissed off about like the Trump thing. It's not just the politics. To me, it was like the hypocrisy on it, right? Because like how did you go from being the guy who was like George Bush doesn't care about black people, rapping about this DEA went to the CCA. He's talking about mass incarceration. He's talking about all these issues, and then you're gonna be like,
something is wrong with that man.
I mean, you know what it is,
right? I don't think he's like sane right now. I just don't think he's sane.
I think that he's a little crazy. He's crazy because he's not on his meds, but I think it's also because my dad also has manic depression, like in a real way, and so like my dad, he can get manic and get kind of crazy and get kind of aloof a little bit, but ultimately, like who he is at his core is who he is still, regardless of like whether he's manic or not. And so when I think about Kanye, I think about my dad, and I'm like, okay, yes, you get manic, you say some kind of sporadic things, but ultimately, like at your core, like there's certain things that you just believe. And there's mental illness. You can only use that so much.
Exactly, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't want to like let this man off the hook just because we all recognize that he's also going through some shit. Because ultimately, what he's going through, everybody, we all have to deal with this crazy ass world. And if he embraces his mental illness, like he does, he, I think, to some extent, likes it. He likes to be off the handle. Like what's the line? It's like, like my mental illness is my superpower.
Yeah,
like,
he said it. His creativity flows while he's
exactly. And like, okay, you benefit from it. You're also going to be a detractor when you
same time.
can't reel yourself in to recognize the harm that you're doing. Like, And also, it's like, this is not somebody who doesn't have resources.
Yeah.
Like, he has had every resource. He's had every opportunity. I'm sure, like, when he posted that shit, like, Diddy being like, yo, bro, like, let's meet up.
Right.
Fuck all this internet. And he's like, nah, the Jews sent you. That's like,
I'm
whoa.
posting
Like,
this shit. He like, I'm posting. That's when I knew, like, Diddy wasn't even helping, bro. I'm not texting you no more. Evan, if I'm texting you and you like, yo, I'm about to post everything you text me, I'm like, nah.
and that's what I'm saying.
I'm
Like, he has isolated himself in a way. And it's like, he only wants yes men around. He only wants the, Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson crowd. How
you feel about Candace?
Fuck Candace Owens. I can't stand. I can't stand. Oh my gosh. I hate, here's the thing. If you're on Fox News, I hate you.
Shout out my boy Billy, man. Shout out my son Billy. He got his own show, Cross Country. Shout out my boy Billy.
I have met Billy many times, actually. I have never said it to his face because I have never had the opportunity to be like...
No, we give him shit all the time.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Like, I've never talked to him. Like, listen, I can't say I hate him. And also, I've never really seen him say anything that's like, oh, you're one of these. Like,
right.
So, like, good for him. Like, listen, get your money to an extent. But, like, I think, like, Candace Owens, especially, like, very exploitative, and I'm just like, yo, like, you're being a terrible mouthpiece. Like, you are being used.
How you feel about gender roles?
I don't know. That's a very broad question.
Do women deserve less? He's just going to ask you all the hot
women deserves less.
Like, listen, women get paid, well, like, 89 cents on the dollar or something. Like, I don't know. It's like, I think that's...
He like, you complaining about 10 cents, bitch.
It's like, no. I obviously, sexism is rampant. And that's one of the other things, like, that Kanye dove into. I honestly kind of forget how exactly. It's hard to keep track of everything.
Right.
No, Kanye gets so manic that it's like, all right, like, I understand. Like, you just shooting in the wind at this point.
Exactly,
like, none of these are informed decisions, or none of these.
So, like, but with like the Hasidic Jews, right?
Yeah.
How do they treat their ladies?
No, there's a very most will call it sexist, to be honest. If you're a very religious Jew, right, like, you can't be a rabbi if you're a woman. Right, the same way that, like, if you're a Catholic, you can't be a priest if you're a woman, right? And, like, these are all...
I never noticed that.
You can be a nun.
Yeah, you can be a nun, but you can't be a priest.
And also, I learned, because there's a nun that came on Horrible Decisions, which is the co-owner of the studio. She's a sex podcast. Had a nun who... She's not a nun anymore. She's a sex expert now, which is insane.
180.
But she was super. And she was just saying how, like nun, she was talking about the rules for nuns and priests, like, as far as, like, abstinence and, like, not getting a wife and, like, things they can do. It's just like sexism plays such a huge role in, like, what they can and cannot do. It's just insane. Anyway.
Yeah, pretty much. Listen, I view every kind of, like, antiquated culture as being pretty sexist. Like, there's not that many. But one of the reasons that, like, I still am able to connect with Judaism is because at least in the practices that I have and in the people that I see, like, there is equality amongst the sexes. And, I wouldn't be able to, like, get behind it if there wasn't.
Okay. So can you explain to me, like, this may be going back way to the beginning, but, like, what's, like, Hebrew and, like, what's, like...
Oh, Hebrew, yeah, it's a language.
Hebrew is the language.
Hebrew is a language.
Okay.
But, okay, people also call, like, the Hebrews, right?
Yeah, the like, Hebrews. That's why I'm like, I'm confused. Like, and this is the thing, people.
Hebrew, that's a biblical...
Yeah, it's just another way to essentially, like, talk about the people, right? Like, like,
that's when people be like, "Oh, you speak African." It's like, bro, what?
Well, like, no, because Swahili. Like, Hebrew is a very specific language. Like, that's what's on this shirt right here. That this is Hebrew.
So that's Kobe in Hebrew.
Yeah, this says Kobe Bryant in Hebrew.
Okay,
it's just like a phonetically, sounded out.
You know how to read Hebrew?
Yeah.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah. That's what Kanye was saying though. Like, when he was saying in the interview, he was like, "Black people are like the original Jews," which is insane because, like, obviously learning about.
Wait, so answer this first. Do you think, like, the original people came from Africa?
Oh yeah, I think all people came from Africa. That's just science. Like, let's not.
Okay. Like, he says, let's not make it too complicated.
Okay, so, like, When I first started hearing about this shit, like it's even if you actually listen to like the Kendrick album, he has like there's like an aside where he's like, "Black people, we are the Israelites, of the Bible." And like I thought about that when I first heard it, like, okay, he's making an argument because he talks about like, and God said, "We will chasten thee like our own son," and all this other stuff. And it's like I thought that was metaphorical, but I also recognize that what is it? It's like the Black Israelites. It's like a group of people and that's actually like a common thread through a lot of the anti-Semitic comments that I hear. And like they are saying the Jewish people of the world are fakes and we are the real Jewish people. And I just think that's bonkers. I think that's nuts because if you talk about like what we went to before, like what is Judaism, like what does it mean to the people? It's like, well, we have both the history, we have the religion, we have the culture, and it's like you can't just discount that and be like, no, that's not you.
Well, what are they faking? Exactly,
and that's what I'm saying.
Because like Black African people, we had to come to. I mean, some of us were brought to America, some of us weren't. So it's just like, are we fake Americans at this point? So like, what does that necessarily mean? Like, what are they getting at?
I don't, and that's I don't understand what they're talking about because they're like, we're the real Hebrews, we're the real Israelites, and I'm just like,
what does that mean?
Like you're saying, like, so when we talk about all these biblical stories, right? When Jesus was in Jerusalem, like you're saying that the people of Jerusalem were the same Black community that was somehow then brought to the Americas through the slave trade. Like I don't get it.
Right.
And I think it is off the rocker, and I think it is a weird delegitimization of Jewish history. And it can be, again, it's very harmful because all these little arguments, they kind of prop each other up and they build and they build and they build. And then whether it is, trying to delegitimize the existence of the state of Israel or whether it is like supporting, violence against Jewish people or like, God forbid, there was ever like another fucking Holocaust type situation where like I'm wearing a little, yellow star to show you that I'm Jewish. Like I choose to wear this, but let me tell you, if somebody made me wear one, that'd be a very different feeling. Right. Like, so I just think it's a dangerous argument and I don't understand. like I used to laugh it off a little bit and I'm like, oh wait, this is like gaining traction and like
it's a real thing.
View it as like,
so Jesus, is his name Yahshua? I don't understand like the whole thing that with understanding like the sons of like Abraham and stuff like that. Can you explain that?
So my understanding, like, listen, I'm familiar with, but I'm not at all like an expert on, Christianity. So Jewish people, same with, Muslim people, do recognize that Jesus was a person who existed, right?
Okay.
But like to the Jewish people, like he was not necessarily a prophet.
He was just like a regular human being.
He was a human being, right? Who was crucified by the Romans, right? Like, and my understanding of the history is right. Like he was preaching a set of ideals, which I think are excellent. Actually, like I think like the principles of his teachings are great. Love thy neighbor, and all these like,
thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal.
And like he was a Jewish man, right? Like that's what I think universally everybody recognizes. Jesus was a Jewish guy who was preaching Jewish principles, right? Like I think in terms of like, the core values, and the core values, there's 100% overlap essentially, right? Like the practice is very different, like Christianity versus Judaism, but like I believe that
you think Christian people will say Jesus was Jewish?
Yeah,
we do. Are you Christian?
No.
Because Christian people acknowledge that. From my experience, that Jesus has been Jew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
A Jewish person.
So.
Sorry.
So T, let me ask you this now. Would you acknowledge that, like, he's Jew the religion or he's Jew the ethnicity?
Personally, like, even with my lack of experience with Jewish people in California, we also still try to be like progressive, and so like I've always acknowledged that like that it wasn't a like necessarily an ethnicity. Like that's how what I've learned.
Mm-hmm.
I've always learned that like it was like more sort of like a way of life or religion.
It's ultimately a religion that like through the years, and also because of the persecution, like what we call like the diaspora, right? Like the spread of the Jews through the world. It just happened to
come
down to being a religion, because
it's almost like black people.
Because it's like, you know, like you have a small community, and like the rituals and the rules of it, like you get kind of insular, right? Like you kind of, you know, there's genetically speaking, there are like Jewish genes you have, right? Like when I
they say the nose thing.
See, the nose is like one you could say is like a what they call, like a, I'm gonna use another big word, a phenotype.
It is.
Right? It's like an external like marker, right? Like you know, you can argue about, like, I'm not sensitive to it. Some people are like, oh, that's
I think that shit
so
is
like,
rooted in like, on average, like Jewish people tend to live in these geographic regions.
Exactly.
Because of that, like people from those regions tend to look like this.
Yeah, people have communities within communities.
Like Kenyans run long distance. Like they just do.
They just do. That's it. That's the life.
And it's like, yo, even if you look like all across New York, right? Like everywhere you go, you have different little subgroups. Like we are in like Chinatown, right? Like
yes.
You gonna get you some shit.
That's also what I want to say. Like just like black people, because you're like, okay, like it kind of got into, it kind of seems like a synonymous with like an ethnicity. It's like the same thing as like being black. Like it's a construct. It's a social construct. It literally does not mean anything. But because we've lived a life where people who are darker complected have been treated a certain way, blah blah blah, or whatever, we turned it into like, okay, we're a group now because we have to be. Yeah. We have to be now because like we're systemically like murdered, blah blah blah, everything. So it's like we have to acknowledge ourselves as a group. It's the same thing, I think, if I'm not mistaken, with Jewish people. It's like, I mean, and originally we didn't necessarily acknowledge ourselves as like an ethnic group, but because of our treatment, we have to acknowledge ourselves as like a group of people now.
Yeah.
Someone's calling
me. Evan, is there anything you want to get off your chest?
Yo, honestly, I feel like I covered pretty much everything. I think everybody who is curious about kind of learning more about, any kind of like tension between social groups and ethnic groups, engage with those actual people, right? Like, I think one of the issues that like Jewish people are angry about is like, you see like, sometimes, and not even just specific to like this issue, like you'll have people discussing issues that are impacting the community without ever talking to the community, right? So it's like, get on the ground floor and like do the work and like open your mind to like, other ideas, and also be, follow the golden rule, right? Treat others the way you would want to be treated. If you're talking about a different group, how would you want somebody to talk about whatever your group might be, right? Like, would you want somebody to assume the worst? Would you want somebody to, believe, from the first instance, like, all these stereotypes, all these conspiracies? Like, no, like, do a little critical thinking and actually know what critical thinking is, because a lot of people don't.
Right. And I feel like one of the themes on here have been like ask the right questions, and actually like try to do some research. And then like third, like is like think for yourself. And me and you were talking, and we weren't talking about religion or anything. We was just like the teachings our mom and dad try to say to us. Like it's like we even had to think for ourselves when we got older. So it's like just apply these like basic principles to the news you're getting, because like honestly, like the news we're getting now is basically people's like opinion. Yeah. Like CNN is like their opinion, Fox is like their opinion, and like we're not getting like the facts. And I feel like right now, like the truth is actually like more valuable than it's ever been, and you actually have to go and go dig and find it. And it's like just ask questions, like try to like sympathize in a way, like put yourself in that person's shoes, or that religion, that country, that just put yourself in their shoes, and then think and like, okay, let me start from here.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was our goal, and I feel like we made like a great progress. We have not probably solved world peace.
Not yet. Give it another decade or two.
But I feel like I'm coming away with a better understanding of like what a Jew is, and like and I want to thank you for coming on here and like saying your story, because like it's very important, and it's very important to see like what get your opinion, because like you have these a lot of people like talking about it, and they're not actually talking to Jewish people, or they're not actually talking to like Black people, or they're not actually talking to like the people that they're actually talking about. And it's like, how do you have any context? How do you have any like tangible experience?
Yeah.
You're just giving your opinion. Now you came up here and you gave us facts. And
I tried to, yeah.
Thank you. I want to thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, bro.
I think they just gonna cut it.
Yeah.